Now to fill everybody in on everything that's happened, I'm going to have to jump around in time a little bit. It has been a while since my last upload, and I wanted to make sure that I explained why everything has been taking so long. An important note about Kirk is that he has a very different way of doing things. His brain is hardwired for function and austerity. And for a good long time, over the winter, I was unavailable to work on this project. And Kirk took the initiative a little bit. A few things turned out good, a few turned out bad. Kirk is used to dealing with older cars and Chevy engines, and when he sees something rusting, he just clear coats over the rust. It is all a part of his style, but most of the people watching this video are already going to understand that letting these old Jeep frames rust is not a good idea. And while the engine was out, I wanted to make sure I took the time to clean up the engine bay, clean up the frame, and paint and protect it. And while I was away, Kirk mounted the new motor mounts right on top of a rusty frame without any cleanup. The engine was also mounted dangerously low and right to the front pumpkin. Kirk's goal in welding the motor mounts to the frame was to keep the engine lower and the drivetrain straighter. He couldn't get his head around the extreme angle of the drive shaft on a lifted Jeep, without realizing it is already highly likely with the lift kit we will have to replace the drive shaft with a W-joint extended one. His thinking and his goal was to keep the drive shaft as level and straight as possible, more along the lines of something like this that he's used to building. While Kirk's way certainly would have saved us from having to buy an extended drive shaft, the error in this thinking is that we already have a clearance problem, and we need to make the clearance greater and not less to allow maximum suspension travel when this Jeep finally hits the trails. So with all this acknowledged, we moved a bunch of Kirk's projects out of the way so we can bring the Jeep out of the snow and inside and work on it in a little more comfort. The engine has also developed several massive oil leaks, especially the rear main seal. I guess all that moving and bumping didn't do this old engine any favors. It's time to get this project inside and reboot it and start over and do it right. The good thing is I get to do it like this. So just when the project seemed to be nearing completion, I had to start it all again. It does feel a little like defeat, but in the end it's just a setback. And with all that backstory out of the way, we can get to taking this engine back out and removing both motor mounts. This time there will be no mistakes, no oil leaks, and nothing left unfinished. And here is where I will officially begin part 3.
Ah, you bastard.
Hey Kirk.
The fat cat, I know.
This cat's doing an impression of you when it was time to work on the Jeep all winter. This really was a bad winter for me and Kirk. We are plagued with feeling frustrations, out of our element, problems that won't seem to end, and there has been many times where we felt like giving up on it.
How could we have an engine the dipstick doesn't even work? Seriously, the dipstick is all bent and banged up. Can we take this back out?
Yeah,
This is ridiculous, man.
In the end, all we could both do was be tenacious. So the first thing I tried to tackle was straightening out this dipstick.
Look at that.
Watch what you're doing, yeah.
Yeah, see that? Nice.
Yeah.
We'll keep that bend. Let's just see if we can get this little thing right out of there just a little bit, right? Maybe that'll help even more. Yeah, just a little bit. Nothing major, you know?
A little bit means a lot with them things.
Yeah. Much better.
here's the difference in these cutting wheels. People have been asking. These are a stainless steel cutting wheel. This thing it'll slice through aluminum, stainless. These are the garbage you get at Harbor Freight, Napa. You know, they're like 3 times as thick. I think these are 30,000s, maybe 40,000s thick, and they just slice right through stuff.
So I have to make a big deal about this. Keep in mind that anything that Kirk builds or works on never gets cleaned and never gets painted. It's part of his code. So a very strange thing happened when I brought my pressure washer over to be used in this project. Much like the caveman being shown a wheel for the first time, Kirk just couldn't stop using it. And luckily this rare sighting was caught on film. One of the things that did mask the oil leaks that were present on this engine was the heavy amount of grease and the degreasing that we didn't do. So what that meant in the end was that Kirk got another excuse to use that pressure washer. It is still crazy for me to watch and edit this watching him clean so much, even if he does have to wear a welding mask while doing it.
Here we have this big rustic man taking off his fem flops. There we go.
Look at these, steel toe.
Yes, yes. Oh, he even takes it off like a girl. Oh, man. Now, don't you feel better? You can walk.
No, a little cramped.
This is what you call a big block in a small Jeep.
One of the major reasons for doing this again and taking the engine back out was to clean up this frame. Most people watching this are already going to know how important it is to get this frame down to as bare metal as possible and throw a good coat of Rust-Oleum on it.
This is terrible, look at that.
I can't tell you how good it feels to be doing this finally. I still remember when I came over to Kirk's house and found that he had put the engine in without doing this step first. But now that it is back out, I am very determined to get this frame as cleaned up as possible, and I put a good hour and a half of work into it. I think the results came out pretty good for the age of the Jeep. Now with everything all cleaned up, we can start the monumental task ahead of us of replacing the rear main seal and other seals involved in all the oil leaks that we found. But one of the first things that we noticed was a problem we weren't aware of until we took the oil pan off.
Does it seem flat over there now?
No. It's still up over there.
It's still raised up a little bit now. Kirk, if you look at right here, it looks like it's that.
Yeah, it looks like we have to grind that a little bit right there, doesn't it?
It could be warped.
Is there a piece of rubber there?
What's this piece right here?
Is that hitting, you think?
That's hitting.
Let's see.
I'm going to try putting that back on.
Oh, man.
So we are discovering that the oil pan has two major problems. One is the measurement was just a little off, and the oil pump grommet is pushing against the bottom of the pan a little too firmly. And the other is that the pan warped from all the heat from the welding.
You got some warp in the pan. Yeah, it's twisted.
No, I can close it with my hands off.
The good news is that the warp is not that bad, and the part of the oil pan that was touching the flex plate is easily fixed. I have to say, I was not in agreement with Kirk's method on how to fix the pan. It is a little unorthodox to say the least.
It's still not quite hitting here and there.
But sometimes you just have to stand in awe as the most jackass looking thing ends up working and solving the problem.
What does it look like now?
Starting to hit in here. He's getting further. It's getting closer to us. It's going to be all smooth.
While Kirk busied himself doing that, I decided to get a small razor blade and carefully take off every piece of the old gasket that I could see. After all that being done, we checked and rechecked the pan for any gaps. Amazingly, that warp was corrected with Kirk's simple and effective solution. With some of the first mistakes corrected, we can now begin the tasks of the rear and front main seal, and these are by far the worst part of this job. The front main seal is not too bad, but to get at the rear main seal, you have to pull the crank.
To get this pulley off, it's interlocked with this top one. You cannot get this pulley off, which runs the water pump, without taking the harmonic balancer off. I've had this thing soaking in WD-40 for a week now.
We are a little out of our element here, and this is a big time of frustration for the both of us, but especially Kirk.
There, an aluminum harmonic balancer. There's the front seal. It's obviously leaking. That's an understatement. Obviously fucking pouring out the front there.
We never expected to get this deep into the engine. Kirk spent the whole morning tearing the engine down, taking off the main caps and getting it ready to replace this rear main seal and front main seal. He is very out of his element. Although he has worked on them in the past, he has not done anything this deep into the internals of this engine. After spending the entirety of a morning just trying to get the rear main seal out of its housing, with no success, Kirk's frustrations are very high.
Fuck this engine, fuck this Jeep, fuck everything.
But luckily, he has a faithful sidekick. Now everybody in life has their strengths and their weaknesses. Whereas you or I might be able to just Google something or search some forums for people that have experience doing this sort of thing, Kirk does not know what those things are or how to Google anything. So he has been just running on instinct to this point. This engine is the OM617.95, and the rear main seal is unfortunately a rope seal, and a 40-year-old one at that. We do not want to wind up pulling the pistons and the entirety of the crank out just to replace this rear main seal. With only the main caps being off, we are not able to create enough give to get that rear main seal out of its housing, so we have to take the timing chain off its gears as well. What you are looking at here is the oil pan side of the rear main seal housing, and on the opposite, the block is identical and has an identical pin to hold the rear main seal firmly in place, something Kirk calls severe over-engineering. It is this pin on the block side of the housing that is preventing us from easily taking this rear main seal out and putting a new one in. It is the reason you have to take apart the engine at this level, and why a so-called drag-through solution to dragging the rope seal through the housing doesn't work without lifting the crank up. Kirk hits me with his idea on how to solve this problem easier, and I'm not very receptive.
My idea is no other engine has those pins. Was this style bearing? You already have that one pin there.
Yeah.
I'm going to knock that pin out of there.
No, you're not.
There's no need to have that.
No, you're not knocking that pin out of there.
That pin ain't going to do nothing.
No way. No way.
All right, then take the engine somewhere and have them do it, because I'm not getting involved with that.
I'll have to pay someone to come out here then.
I don't have to know how to do
Off
that.
camera, me and
Right.
Kirk go back and forth for some time. What we end up agreeing on is to tear down the timing system just a little bit more, and to continue to try to pry the crank up to give us a little more space to work with.
This is whatever you're trying to do here isn't going to work. It's just not. We have to get this crank to pull up so we can clean that fucking groove out.
I'm trying. I mean, look.
We can't. We have to be able to access it with. It has to be up at least an inch. Or do they work?
Yeah, I know they work with those big gloves on,
They're broken. You have a pair that's not broken.
but no.
No.
It's just lacking the spring.
Yeah, pulled right apart.
So I'm saying it's like so.
Yeah.
So
I didn't even pull on
No,
it. Just clamping it down.
We need to get the crank up to about an inch to attempt a drag-through solution. What we are discovering is there's not much to grab onto to drag through, and the rear main seal has turned to dust and powder and crumbles in my hands.
Oh yeah, with those big, ugly, beautiful gloves you got on. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, man, you're gonna bend something or break something.
You gonna go see a psychiatrist or
After hanging out with you, I might.
what helps?
Oh,
me?
whoa. That just moved up again.
Oh, good.
So the agreement me and Kirk came to was very simple. We take apart the timing more so we can lift the crank up higher. And if he can't get it back together right and the engine explodes, we scrap this project and it's out of his hair. A risky deal.
I can't believe that isn't fucking breaking out of there.
But after hours trying to smash that pin out of there with a welding rod, we give up that it's ever going to break loose, and accept the reality and the risk of tearing this engine down, going to places neither one of us has any experience in.
Timing right there. Okay, so there's our keyway right there too. See our keyway? Small little imaginary keyway there.
With the rest of the timing chain off, we flip the engine back around to see if we can get any more lift on that crank.
Oh, look, another chunk of rear main seal just broke off.
Okay.
That's the cylinder decompressing. Be very careful. That's up a lot.
Yep. Is it pretty
I
high?
think it's pretty high.
it
Just
pretty
give it a
high?
try what you were doing before. I bet you get it right out of there.
Okay. There it is. Grab it.
Okay, there's your welding rod.
There's your welding rod. I'm hoping. Where's my other welding rod at?
You every time you set something down, you ask me where it's at.
Yeah, you're supposed to keep an eye on me for crying out loud.
The question of, is the rear main seal of the OM617 replaceable by a drag-through solution is a complicated answer, but it is yes. Now it's time to find out if we created enough height to drag the new one through as well.
I mean, it is absolute powder coming out of there. That's worrying me that even a little bit of that in the engine could cause some...
We flipped the engine yet again to get it right side up. We have to clean the remnants of that rear main seal out of there as thoroughly as possible. We don't want to take the risk that any of these metal fragments stay in the engine once we complete it.
You have it backwards, Kirk.
We make a quick run to the local AutoZone. We have to get some brake cleaner to clean it up, and we also stocked up on some oil that we need because we are both feeling much more optimistic about getting this engine back together.
All that trouble for this thing.
Unbelievable, right?
Yeah. Okay, you're putting the pressure on your end. Okay. Easy.
Now with the same amount of pressure on the crankshaft adapter and the same amount of lift on the crankshaft, we are going to attempt to drag through the new rear main seal. Now I'm sorry for my crappy filming during this, but we just didn't have enough hands.
That's as high as you can lift it, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, there it goes. Whew. I thought we were gonna have to fight. Come on, baby. So close. Okay, have a look on the other side. Yep, see it's right there. It came through. Sticking up, yep. Barely 1/8 of an inch. Okay, cool. Okay, that's good. Good, relax. We got it.
It's in?
It's in. Woo! Wow. Holy shit. That was a job.
We are both relieved and ecstatic. On the very first attempt, we were able to get the rear main seal in place with a drag-through solution. Although that drag-through solution did involve tearing the engine down a great deal, it is done. So this has been a project, and now it's time to start piecing it all back together. I have to give Kirk a lot of credit in this project. He has stepped way out of his comfort zone, and everything so far has gone pretty good, with just a few setbacks.
Wow, you're the one who just ready to junk it 10 minutes ago. All right.
Well, we were both ready to junk it 10 minutes ago.
So sorry about the long gap between uploads, but let me know what you think in the comments below, and please like the video if you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching.